General Corvin Blackthorn's smile never wavered, as the neural disruptor carved fresh channels of agony through his nervous system. The Velthari interrogator, its crystalline face reflecting prismatic light, pulled back the device with what might have been confusion in a species that understood such emotions. "Your pain receptors function normally," the creature hissed through its translator. "Yet you display satisfaction." Blackthorn's restraints bit into flesh already raw from 3 days of systematic torture, but his grin only widened. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth where they'd extracted teeth, yet his eyes held the steady gleam of a predator playing dead. "I'm just thinking about what happens next." The interrogation chamber aboard the Velthari flagship Crystalline Dominion hummed with alien technology designed to break minds across 1,000 species. Gravity fluctuators that liquefied bones, sonic resonators that shattered eardrums, bioelectric scramblers that turned nerve endings into molten wire. All had been applied to the captured human general with scientific precision. None had yielded. The location of humanity's remaining fleet, the lead interrogator, Prism Commander Valandra, approached with movements like flowing mercury. Her race had perfected the art of extracting information from unwilling subjects over millennia of conquest. 67 species had surrendered their deepest secrets in this very chamber before being consigned to extinction. "Your homeworld burns," she said, activating a holographic display. Earth hung suspended between them, continents ablaze with Velthari plasma bombardment. Cities that had stood for millennia crumbled into radioactive dust. "Your colonies fall. One by one, your species faces absolute annihilation. Tell us where Admiral Nexus hides your final battle group, and we will grant humanity a swift end." Blackthorn studied the destruction of his birth world with the detached interest of someone reviewing tactical reports. His smile never faltered. "Pretty fireworks, but you missed something important. Your defiances." Curious, Valandra's crystalline features shifted through spectrums of frustrated color. "Every species pleads for mercy at this stage. They weep for their young, their worlds, their futures. You smile as if witnessing entertainment." "That's because I am." Blackthorn leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. "You see, Admiral Nexus isn't hiding our final battle group. She's positioning it." The Velthari had swept through the Orion arm like a crystalline plague, their technology centuries ahead of younger species. Their ships melted through defensive lines like heated blades through ice. Their weapons turned planets into glowing cinders. Their fleets moved with mechanical precision that made resistance seem laughably futile. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed humans would break like every other species they'd encountered. "We have studied your kind extensively," Valandra continued. "Psychological profiles indicate humans possess average pain tolerance, standard emotional attachment to offspring and territory, typical survival instincts. You should have capitulated after the first orbital bombardment." Blackthorn's laugh echoed off the chamber walls, a sound devoid of sanity, yet somehow more terrifying than any scream. "That's your problem right there. You studied us like we were just another species on your extinction list. But you never understood what makes humans truly dangerous. Enlighten us before we resume extracting information through more creative methods." "It's not our technology yours is better. It's not our ships yours are faster. It's not even our weapons yours hit harder." Blackthorn's eyes fixed on the alien with predatory intensity. "It's that when you push us to the edge of extinction, we don't just fight back. We make sure you never threaten anyone ever again." Valandra activated another torture device, this one designed to stimulate every pain receptor simultaneously while keeping the subject conscious. The human general's body convulsed as electricity coursed through neural pathways, yet his smile remained fixed in place like a death mask. "Your bravado impresses no one," she said. "We have eliminated species with greater military might, superior technology, more advanced tactics. Humanity will join them in oblivion. Maybe." Blackthorn gasped between waves of agony. "But not before we take you with us." Through the chamber's observation ports, the Velthari fleet stretched across space like a crystal forest, thousands of ships arrayed in perfect geometric patterns. Each vessel bristled with weapons capable of sterilizing worlds. This armada had carved a path of extinction through the galaxy for 3,000 years, leaving only radioactive graveyards in its wake. But somewhere in the darkness between stars, Admiral Elena Nexus was making final preparations for humanity's last desperate gambit, a plan so audacious, so ruthlessly calculated, that it required the sacrifice of Earth itself just to position the pieces correctly. And General Corvin Blackthorne would keep smiling until every last Velthari ship burned. Admiral Elena Nexus watched Earth die through the main display of the UES Retribution, her weathered face carved from granite as the world of her birth became a radioactive wasteland. Around her, the bridge crew maintained professional silence, but she could feel their barely controlled rage radiating like heat from a furnace. Velthari bombardment entering final phase, reported Commander Yuki Tanaka, her voice steady despite tears tracking down her cheeks. Estimated complete planetary sterilization in 6 hours. Nexus nodded without emotion. Earth's sacrifice was planned, necessary, but no less agonizing to witness. For billion souls traded for positioning advantage, the kind of calculation that would have been unthinkable before the Velthari began their systematic extermination of humanity. Signal from the Magellan. Called Lieutenant Marcus Webb from Communications. Captain Rodriguez confirms his battle group is in position at Kepler 442. All ships report battle-ready status. Acknowledged. What about Blackthorne? Webb's expression darkened. Last transmission was 18 hours ago. Signal originated from the Velthari flagship before going dark. Nexus felt something cold settle in her chest. Corvin Blackthorne had volunteered for the most dangerous part of their plan, allowing himself to be captured while carrying false intelligence about humanity's final fleet positions. The Velthari would torture him for information, but every hour he held out gave her forces more time to complete their preparations. "Ma'am," Tanaka said quietly, "incoming transmission from Velthari command frequencies. It's General Blackthorne." The main screen flickered, revealing the interior of a Velthari torture chamber. Blackthorne hung suspended in restraints that kept him spread-eagled while alien devices carved systematic wounds across his body. His uniform was gone, replaced by blood and burn marks. Yet somehow he maintained that infuriating smile. Behind him stood Prism Commander Valandra, her crystalline form reflecting light in patterns that suggested smug satisfaction. "Admiral Nexus, your general has proven remarkably resistant to standard interrogation techniques. Perhaps witnessing his continued suffering will encourage cooperation." Nexus studied her old friend's mutilated form without flinching. They'd served together for 30 years, survived the Titan campaigns, shared bottles of synthetic whiskey while planning impossible victories. But she couldn't allow emotion to compromise their last desperate chance. "General Blackthorne," she said formally. "Report." Blackthorne's smile widened, fresh blood painting his teeth crimson. "Having a wonderful vacation, Admiral. The accommodations are stimulating, though I do miss the coffee." Valandra activated another device, sending visible jolts of electricity through the human's nervous system. His body convulsed, muscles straining against restraints, but the smile never wavered. "Your Admiral remains silent while you suffer," the Velthari commander observed. "This suggests humans possess even less pack loyalty than our xenobiological studies indicated." "Fascinating. You really don't understand us at all," Blackthorne gasped. "Elena isn't staying quiet because she doesn't care. She's staying quiet because she knows I won't break." Nexus activated her own communication protocols, broadcasting on all Velthari command frequencies. "Prism Commander, you have something that belongs to us. We're prepared to negotiate terms for General Blackthorne's return." Intriguing. The human leadership finally shows wisdom. "What do you offer?" "The location of our remaining battle groups, all of them." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Nexus could feel her crew's shock radiating outward. They believed she was genuinely surrendering humanity's last hope. To save one man, they were wrong, but that was the point. "Continue," Valandra said, crystalline features shifting to display interest. "We have 15 battle groups remaining, scattered across 7 systems. Each contains between 30 and 60 vessels, including our most advanced dreadnoughts. I'll transmit coordinates in exchange for General Blackthorn's immediate release. On screen, Blackthorn's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Only someone who'd known him for decades would catch the subtle change's slight narrowing of the eyes that meant he understood the real plan. Your terms are acceptable, Valandra replied. Transmit the coordinates. Nexus input a complex data stream, watching as the Velthari analyzed humanity's supposed final positions. The information was accurate. Those 15 battle groups did exist exactly where she claimed. The Velthari would find them, engage them, and destroy them with overwhelming firepower. What Valandra didn't know was that those ships represented less than 20% of humanity's actual remaining forces. Transmission confirmed, the alien commander said. We will release your general after we verify these positions and eliminate the threat they represent. Understood. Nexus out. The channel closed, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Commander Tanaka was the first to speak. Admiral, with respect, those coordinates are exactly what I meant to send. Nexus interrupted. Trust the plan. Commander, everything depends on the Velthari believing they've won. She stared at the tactical display showing their true fleet positions. Over 300 vessels hidden in dead systems, asteroid fields, and gravitational shadows across the outer rim. Ships crewed by survivors of Earth's evacuation, refugees from destroyed colonies, and volunteers from neutral species who'd finally recognized the Velthari threat. Phase 1 was complete. The enemy had the bait. Now came the difficult part, keeping General Blackthorn alive long enough for Phase 2 to begin. On the torture ship, Corvin Blackthorn continued smiling as Valandra prepared another round of systematic agony. He thought about Elena's plan, about the ships moving through darkness toward their final positions, about the weapon that would either save the galaxy or damn it forever. Either way, the Velthari were about to learn why humans smiled in the face of extinction. The Velthari fleet moved through space like a crystalline storm, their formation a perfect geometric nightmare that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. Prism Commander Valandra stood on the bridge of the crystalline dominion, watching tactical displays update as her forces converged on the coordinates Admiral Nexus had provided. Status report. She commanded, her voice carrying undertones that would shatter glass on most worlds. First battle group located at Kepler 442, reported her tactical coordinator. 47 human vessels detected. They appear to be attempting evasive maneuvers. Valandra's crystalline features shifted through spectrums of anticipation. Eliminate them. The battle erupted across the Kepler system as Velthari destroyers engaged Captain Rodriguez's defensive formation. Human ships, their hulls scarred from previous encounters, wheeled desperately through space as crystal-tipped missiles tore through their ranks. The U's Barcelona exploded in a burst of superheated plasma, taking her crew of 300 with her. The Prague lasted longer, her point defense systems shredding incoming projectiles until a Velthari beam weapon carved through her reactor core. One by one, the human battle group died exactly as Valandra expected. Target eliminated, reported the tactical coordinator, moving to second coordinates. In the torture chamber 3 decks below, General Blackthorn felt each ship's death like a physical blow. These were his people, officers he'd trained, crews he'd led into battle, friends who'd shared drinks and stories during rare peaceful moments. Their sacrifice was necessary, planned, but no less agonizing to witness through the tactical feeds Valandra displayed with sadistic pleasure. Your admiral's battle groups die exactly as predicted, the Velthari commander observed. Each engagement follows identical patterns: desperate resistance, tactical withdrawal, inevitable destruction. Your species lacks imagination. Blackthorn's smile had become something grotesque, painted with blood from fresh wounds. You're right about one thing: we do follow patterns. Enlighten us. When cornered, humans don't just fight for survival. We fight for revenge. Valandra activated neural disruptors again, sending fresh waves of agony through the general's nervous system. But instead of screaming, he began to laugh, a sound devoid of sanity that made even hardened Velthari guards step backward. Your pain responses indicate severe neurological damage, Valandra noted clinically. Extended torture has compromised your higher brain functions. Or maybe I just know something you don't. The tactical displays updated again. Another human battle group found. Another one-sided massacre. The Velthari moved with mechanical precision, their superior technology making each engagement a foregone conclusion. Beam weapons that could melt through a meter of armor plating. Shield systems that deflected everything humans could throw at them. Ships that moved faster than anything in the galaxy. By any logical measure, humanity should have surrendered after the first orbital bombardment. Their technology was inferior, their numbers diminished, their strategic position hopeless. Yet they kept fighting with the desperate fury of cornered animals. 9th Battle Group eliminated. The coordinator reported, estimated human fleet strength, now reduced to approximately 200 vessels. Valandra felt the familiar satisfaction of another species approaching extinction. The pattern was always the same: initial resistance, desperate tactics, gradual attrition, final collapse. Some races lasted longer than others, but the outcome never varied. Time to complete the remaining eliminations, 18 hours at current pursuit velocity. Perfect. The Velthari war doctrine emphasized complete annihilation, not just military defeat, but total species elimination. They'd learned from experience that leaving survivors led to inconvenient resistance movements. Better to ensure no witnesses remained to pass on genetic material or cultural memory. In his restraints, Blackthorn continued smiling as Valandra prepared to resume interrogation. The neural disruptors had been joined by sonic scramblers, bioelectric manipulators, and gravity distorters, a full array of torture devices designed to extract information from the most stubborn subjects. Your remaining ships will be dead within one standard day, she informed him. Humanity will join 67 other species in extinction. Your pain serves no purpose except our scientific curiosity. Actually, Blackthorn said conversationally, my pain serves a very specific purpose. It's buying time. Time for what? Your admiral's surrender. Time for her to get angry. Valandra paused, crystalline features shifting through spectrums of confusion. In 3,000 years of conquest, she'd never encountered a species that seemed to welcome their own destruction. Explain. Blackthorn's laugh filled the chamber again, echoing off walls designed to amplify suffering. You've studied human psychology, right? Our emotional responses, pain tolerance, survival instincts, extensively. But you miss the most important thing about us. When humans get angry, really, truly angry, we stop caring about survival. We stop thinking about consequences. We focus on one thing and one thing only, which is. The general's smile stretched wider, revealing gaps where teeth had been extracted, making sure the thing that hurt us never hurts anyone else. On the bridge, Valandra's tactical displays showed the systematic destruction of humanity's remaining forces. Ship after ship died in precisely calculated engagements, their desperate maneuvers predictable and ultimately futile. The pattern suggested complete strategic collapse, exactly what the Velthari expected. What they didn't see were the new contacts appearing on long-range sensors, ships emerging from gravitational shadows and dead systems where no vessels should exist. Admiral Nexus had sacrificed 15 battle groups to sell the illusion of defeat. But humanity's real fleet was just beginning to move. Deep in the outer system, beyond the range of Velthari detection, 300 human vessels began their final approach. Ships jury-rigged with weapons that violated every interstellar treaty, crewed by survivors who'd watched their worlds burn, commanded by officers who'd traded their humanity for a chance at revenge. And at the center of the formation, the UES, Retribution carried Admiral Elena Nexus toward her final battle. In her private quarters, she reviewed tactical projections one last time while her hands trembled with barely controlled rage. The Velthari had made their choice when they decided to torture Corvin Blackthorn. Now they would learn why humans smiled in the face of extinction. Admiral Elena Nexus stood in the observation deck of the UES Retribution, watching her hidden fleet emerge from the darkness between stars. 300 vessels materialized from gravitational shadows and dead systems, where they'd waited in enforced silence for 18 hours, their crews surviving on emergency life support. To avoid detection, all ships report ready status, Commander, Tanaka announced. The Velthari fleet remains focused on pursuing our decoy battle groups. Nexus nodded, her weathered face carved from stone. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, she could see the Oblivion's edge, Blackwater, and Final Answer dreadnoughts armed with weapons that made her stomach clench. Project Prometheus had been humanity's darkest secret, researched and hidden, facilities while Earth burned, developed by scientists who'd traded their souls for a chance at revenge. Status on General Blackthorn. Last transmission showed continuing torture, but he's maintaining the deception. The Velthari believe they've located our final fleet positions. Nexus felt something cold settle in her chest. Corvin had been in enemy hands for days now, enduring systematic agony while selling the illusion that humanity was broken. Every hour he held out gave her forces more time to position themselves. For the final gambit, "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant Webb from Communications, "incoming priority signal from Dr. Sarah Chen on the Prometheus." The main display flickered, revealing the interior of humanity's most heavily modified ship. Dr. Chen stood in what had once been a hangar bay, now converted into a massive weapons platform that hummed with barely contained energy. Behind her, technicians made final adjustments to devices that seemed to bend light around their edges. "Admiral," Chen said, her voice carrying the weight of terrible knowledge, "the temporal displacement weapons are fully charged. We're ready to begin Phase 2. Nexus studied the woman who'd designed humanity's ultimate weapon. Sarah Chen had been a theoretical physicist before the war, specializing in exotic matter research and gravitational anomalies. Now she looked like someone who'd stared into an abyss and found it staring back. Final casualty projections. Complete Velthari fleet elimination within 12 hours. Estimated human losses. Chen paused, consulting data that made her hands shake. 70% of our remaining forces, maybe 80. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Nexus felt her crew's shock radiating outward. They'd known the plan would be costly, but those numbers represented the virtual extinction of their species. Acceptable. Nexus said simply, "Initiate deployment." Across the human fleet, ships began radical modifications that violated every principle of military engineering. Reactor cores were overcharged beyond safety parameters. Shield generators rerouted to create exotic field effects. Weapon systems jury-rigged with components that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. The Use Ragnarok led the first wave, her hull bristling with temporal displacement cannons that could unmake matter at the quantum level. Captain Maria Santos had volunteered for the suicide mission, despite knowing her ship would be destroyed in the first salvo. Target the Velthari flagship. Nexus commanded. All ships, execute Operation Orpheus. The battle erupted across space as human vessels dropped their stealth systems and engaged the crystalline fleet. But this wasn't the desperate, defensive combat the Velthari expected. It was a calculated assault designed to cause maximum casualties regardless of cost. The Ragnarok fired her temporal weapons at point-blank range, reality warping around. The energy discharge as exotic particles tore through the quantum foam. The Velthari destroyer crystal spear simply ceased to exist. Its atoms scattered across 16 dimensions simultaneously. But the human ship paid for that victory. Velthari returned fire carved through her hull like heated plasma through ice. Reactor coolant bleeding into space as her crew fought to maintain weapon systems. Santos held her position for 37 seconds before the Ragnarok exploded in a burst of temporal energy that took 2 more enemy vessels with her. First wave reports successful deployment, Tanaka announced. Enemy fleet is regrouping to counter our attack on the Crystalline Dominion. Prism Commander Valandra felt something she hadn't experienced in Millennian uncertainty. The human attack pattern made no tactical sense. They were sacrificing ships in exchange for minimal enemy casualties, throwing away vessels and crews with reckless abandon. Analysis. She demanded. Unknown weapons signatures detected. Her tactical coordinator reported. Energy readings suggest exotic matter manipulation, possibly temporal displacement technology. Valandra's crystalline features shifted through spectrums of concern. Temporal weapons were theoretical even for her advanced species. The energy requirements were enormous, and the side effects potentially catastrophic. How did they develop such technology? Unknown. But Admiral, if they're willing to use temporal displacement weapons, they've abandoned all concern for survival, Valandra finished. For the first time in 3,000 years of conquest, she was facing an enemy that prioritized destruction over self-preservation. In the torture chamber, General Blackthorn felt the ship shudder as temporal weapons struck the Velthari formation. Through the tactical displays, he watched human ships die in brilliant flashes of exotic energy while their weapons tore holes in reality itself. Your species has developed forbidden technology, Valandra observed, her usual composure cracking. Temporal manipulation violates every civilized principle. Blackthorn's smile had become something transcendent, painted with blood but radiating absolute conviction. Civilization is a luxury we can't afford anymore. You made sure of that when you decided to torture me. Explain. Elena isn't just my admiral. She's my wife. The revelation hit Valandra like a physical blow. In all their psychological profiles of human leadership, they'd missed that crucial connection. Admiral Nexus wasn't just fighting for her species, she was fighting for personal revenge. A mated pair, Valandra whispered. Your emotional bonds run deeper than our studies indicated. Much deeper. And Elena has been planning this moment since the day you captured me. Every ship you've destroyed, every battle group you've eliminated, all distractions to position our real fleet for one final strike. Through the observation ports, the battle raged with unprecedented ferocity. Human vessels rammed Velthari ships at relativistic speeds, their crews accepting certain death to maximize enemy casualties. Temporal weapons carved through crystalline armor like molecular acid, while alien beam weapons vaporized human hulls in return. But for every human ship destroyed, the exotic weapons claimed multiple Velthari vessels. Technology designed by desperate scientists was proving devastatingly effective against an enemy that had never faced weapons capable of rewriting the laws of physics. Your wife commands a suicide fleet, Valandra said. No, Blackthorn corrected, his smile widening to something that belonged on a death's head. She commands an extinction fleet. There's a difference. The Velthari commander finally understood what made humans truly dangerous. It wasn't their technology, their tactics, or their numbers. It was their willingness to embrace mutual annihilation rather than accept defeat. And Admiral Elena Nexus was about to demonstrate exactly how far human revenge could reach. The battle raged across 17 cubic light-minutes of space as humanity's hidden fleet emerged from their final positions. Admiral Elena Nexus watched from the bridge of the UES Retribution as her carefully positioned forces struck the Velthari formation from 8 directions simultaneously. Temporal weapons tearing holes in reality while conventional ordnance filled the void with deadly fire. Third wave initiating attack run, Commander Tanaka reported, her voice steady despite the carnage surrounding them. Captain Morrison's squadron is targeting their command cluster. The UES Vengeance led 12 destroyers in a suicide charge against the Velthari flagship formation. Captain Marcus Morrison had lost his family when Proxima Centauri burned, and his ship bristled with experimental weapons that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. Temporal displacement cannons hummed with barely contained energy as his squadron accelerated to attack velocity. Target acquired, Morrison transmitted. For Earth, his ships opened fire at maximum range. Exotic energy lancing through space as temporal weapons unmade matter. At the quantum level, the Velthari heavy cruiser, Prismatic Death, simply ceased to exist, its crystalline hull scattered across multiple dimensions. But the enemy returned fire with devastating precision. Velthari beam weapons carved through human shields like molecular fire, superheated plasma boiling away armor plating, while gravity manipulators crushed hulls into twisted metal. The destroyer, Santiago, exploded in a brilliant fireball, her reactor core breaching under concentrated fire. The Melbourne lasted longer, her crew maintaining weapon systems even as the ship broke apart around them. Morrison's Vengeance took direct hits from 3 Velthari destroyers, her hull bleeding atmosphere as internal explosions cascaded through damaged sections. But he held his position long enough to target the enemy flagship, Temporal Lance. Full charge, he ordered. Fire. The weapon discharged with energy visible across multiple spectrums, reality warping around the beam as exotic. Particles tore through the quantum foam. The blast struck the crystalline dominion's shields, temporal distortions rippling across defensive fields in patterns that hurt to perceive. But the flagship's defenses held, advanced technology absorbing and redistributing the temporal energy. Morrison's sacrifice had damaged the enemy command ship without destroying it. Wave 3 eliminated, Tanaka announced. Enemy casualties, 7 ships destroyed, multiple others damaged. Nexus nodded grimly. The exchange rate was brutal, but acceptable. They were trading human lives for Velthari vessels. At roughly 3-to-1 odds, in any normal engagement, such losses would be catastrophic. But this wasn't a normal battle. This was genocide by mutual consent. Status on the Prometheus weapons. Dr. Chen reports 60% charge remaining. She can maintain current fire rate for another 4 hours. The Prometheus hung at the center of the human formation, like a technological nightmare. Her hull bristling with temporal displacement arrays that bent light around their edges. Dr. Sarah. Chen stood in the converted hangar bay, watching readouts that described violations of physical law while her weapons unmade Velthari. Ships one by one, targeting matrix updated. She announced to her technical crew, focus fire on their heavy units. The ship's main weapon discharged again. A beam of pure temporal distortion that struck a Velthari battlecruiser amidships. The alien vessel folded in on itself. As spacetime warped around the impact point, crystalline armor compressing to infinite density before exploding outward in a cascade of exotic particles. But the effort cost them. Warning klaxons screamed across the Prometheus as temporal feedback cascaded through her modified systems. Emergency bulkheads sealed as exotic radiation leaked from compromised containment systems. Hull breach in Section 7, reported Chief Engineer Martinez. Temporal shielding is down to 40%. We're taking massive structural damage. Chen nodded without emotion. The ship had never been designed to survive this battle, just to maintain fire long enough to eliminate the Velthari fleet. Every shot brought them closer to catastrophic containment failure, but that was acceptable. They were fighting for extinction, not survival. On the Velthari flagship, Prism Commander Valandra watched her perfect formation disintegrate under the human assault. Ships that had conquered the galaxy for 3,000 years died in brilliant flashes of temporal energy, their crews vaporized by weapons that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Fleet status, she demanded. 47 vessels destroyed, 31 heavily damaged. Her tactical coordinator reported, human fleet strength down to approximately 150 ships, but their exotic weapons continued to cause disproportionate casualties. Valandra's crystalline features shifted through spectrums of frustrated rage. The battle was progressing exactly opposite to every engagement model in their tactical databases. The humans were winning through sheer willingness to embrace mutual annihilation, analysis of their weapon systems, temporal displacement technology, but heavily modified. They're channeling exotic energy through conventional ship systems, creating massive instabilities. Most of their vessels won't survive another hour of combat. Neither will ours at this rate. The truth was undeniable. The Velthari possessed superior technology, better shields, more advanced weapons, but the humans had developed something they'd never encountered. Weapons powered by absolute desperation, wielded by crews who'd accepted death as the price of revenge. In the torture chamber, General Blackthorn felt each enemy ship's destruction like a physical caress. Through the tactical displays, he watched Velthari vessels die in exotic fire while their weapons claimed human lives in return. The exchange was brutal, but it was working. Your wife commands admirably, Valandra said, her usual composure completely shattered. But Pyrrhic victory serves no evolutionary purpose. Both fleets will be extinct within hours. Blackthorn's smile had transcended pain, blood, and sanity. That's the point. Elena isn't trying to win this battle. She's trying to end this war. By ensuring mutual extinction. By making sure you never threaten another species again. Through the observation ports, the battle raged with unprecedented violence. Human ships rammed Velthari vessels at relativistic speeds. their crews screaming battle cries as they turned their vessels into kinetic weapons. Temporal lances carved through crystalline armor, while alien beam weapons vaporized human hulls. In return, the UES Blackwater exploded as concentrated fire overwhelmed her shields, but not before her temporal weapons claimed the Velthari heavy cruiser Diamond Edge. The destroyer Wolf's Bane lasted 37 seconds against 3 enemy ships, her crew maintaining fire control even as the hull ruptured around them. One by one, both fleets burned. But Admiral Elena Nexus wasn't finished. Hidden in her personal quarters were the activation codes for humanity's final weapon, something so terrible that even Dr. Chen had begged her not to deploy it. The Velthari were about to learn what happened when humans stopped caring about tomorrow. Admiral Elena Nexus stood alone in her private quarters aboard the UES Retribution, holding a data crystal that contained humanity's final gambit. Around her, the ship shuddered as Velthari weapons hammered their failing shields, while through the viewport she watched the systematic destruction of both fleets. Admiral. Commander Tanaka's voice crackled through the calm system, distorted by electromagnetic interference from temporal weapons. Hull integrity down to 30%. We've lost main propulsion and half our weapon systems. Nexus inserted the crystal into her personal command console, watching as Project Icarus initialized. The weapon Dr. Chen had designed in her darkest moment, a temporal cascade bomb capable of unmaking matter across entire star systems. Using it would guarantee the Velthari's extinction, but the side effects would render a dozen systems uninhabitable for millennia. The price of revenge was always higher than anticipated. Status on General Blackthorn? She asked quietly. Still alive, ma'am. Long-range sensors show the Velthari flagship has taken heavy damage, but remains operational. Through the tactical display, Nexus watched her fleet die ship by ship. The destroyer Iron Will exploded as concentrated beam fire overwhelmed her reactor shielding. The cruiser Defiant lasted longer, her crew maintaining temporal weapons until the hull finally ruptured, taking 43 enemy fighters with her. But the Velthari were dying too. Their perfect crystalline formation had dissolved into desperate combat as human ships closed a point-blank range, trading certain death for enemy casualties. The alien battlecruiser Void Shard folded in on itself as temporal distortions tore through her quantum structure, while the heavy cruiser Crystal Storm simply ceased to exist. When reality warped around a direct hit from the Prometheus. Ma'am. Tanaka called again. Dr. Chen is requesting permission to overload the Prometheus weapons. She believes she can take out their command cluster, but the ship won't survive the discharge. Nexus finished. Permission granted. Aboard the heavily modified Prometheus, Sarah Chen made final adjustments to temporal displacement rays that were never meant to channel this much exotic energy. Her ship had become a floating violation of physics. Her hull cracked from constant exposure to forces that existed outside normal spacetime. All stations, prepare for maximum discharge, she announced to her remaining crew. This is going to unmake us at the quantum level, but we'll take half their fleet with us. The weapon charged beyond all safety parameters, temporal energy bleeding through compromised containment systems as reality warped around the ship's hull. Chen watched readouts that described the complete annihilation of matter and energy. Knowing that activating the weapon would scatter her atoms across 16 dimensions, she thought about her family on Earth, vaporized in the first Velthari bombardment, about her colleagues who died developing these forbidden weapons, about the children who would never be born because humanity had chosen extinction over surrender. Target the flagship formation, she ordered. Maximum spread, fire, the Prometheus. Discharged every temporal weapon simultaneously. Reality fracturing around the energy release as exotic particles tore through the quantum foam. The beam struck the Velthari flagship formation with the force of a collapsing star. Temporal distortions rippling outward in patterns that violated every law of physics. The heavy cruiser Prismatic Void simply ceased to exist, her crystalline hull scattered across multiple dimensions. The battlecruiser Diamond Fortress folded in on itself as spacetime warped around the impact point. Her crew vaporized before they could comprehend what was happening. But the crystalline Dominion survived. her advanced shields absorbing and redistributing the temporal energy through crystalline matrices. Designed to channel exotic forces, the flagship's hull cracked under the assault, atmosphere bleeding into space. But Prism Commander Valandra's command ship remained functional. The Prometheus paid the ultimate price. For her sacrifice, Dr. Chen watched her ship tear itself apart. At the molecular level, temporal feedback cascading through every system as exotic radiation leaked from ruptured containment fields. She had 3 seconds to smile before the vessel imploded, taking her brilliant mind and tortured soul into the darkness between dimensions. Chen's gone, Tanaka reported, her voice hollow. But she took out 8 enemy ships including the heavy cruisers. Nexus felt each loss like a physical wound, but she couldn't afford grief, not yet. Through the tactical display, she could see the Velthari flagship limping through space. Her crystalline hull fractured, but still deadly. Somewhere aboard that ship, Corvin Blackthorn continued his lonely vigil, buying time with his blood while the battle raged around him. Fleet status, 43 ships remaining. The Velthari are down to approximately 60 vessels, but their flagship and most heavy units are still operational. The exchange rate was finally shifting in humanity's favor, but victory would come at a cost that bordered on species suicide. Nexus accessed Project Icarus again, watching as the temporal cascade weapon completed its charging sequence. One activation would guarantee the enemy's destruction, but the side effects would render entire systems uninhabitable for geological ages. On the Velthari flagship, General Blackthorn felt the ship shudder as human temporal weapons carved through her crystalline armor. Sparks cascaded from damaged systems while emergency lighting bathed the torture chamber. In crimson shadows, through the tactical displays, he watched both fleets die in exotic fire. "Your admiral fights with admirable desperation," Valandra said. Her crystalline features cracked from the ship's damage. But victory through mutual extinction serves no purpose. Blackthorn's smile had become something transcendent, painted with blood but radiating absolute conviction. "Elena isn't fighting for victory. She's fighting for justice. Explain. You've spent 3,000 years exterminating species across the galaxy. 67 civilizations turned to radioactive dust because you decided they were inferior. Today, that ends." Valandra activated her torture devices one final time, desperate to break the human before her ship was destroyed. Neural disruptors carved fresh channels of agony through Blackthorn's nervous system, while sonic scramblers shattered nerve endings that had already been pushed beyond their limits. But instead of screaming, the general began to laugh, a sound devoid of sanity that echoed off the chamber walls like the voice of a broken god. "Your species dies today," he gasped between waves of agony, "every last one of you. And tomorrow, the galaxy will be free through the observation ports." The final phase of the battle unfolded with apocalyptic intensity. The human heavy cruiser, Retribution's edge, rammed the Velthari destroyer Void Blade at half the speed of light, both ships vaporizing in a burst of kinetic energy that could be seen from neighboring systems. The destroyer Final Answer held position against 5 enemy ships, her crew maintaining fire control even as the hull ruptured around them. Captain Williams transmitted his last words as temporal weapons tore his vessel apart. "For the children who'll never be born." But Admiral Nexus wasn't finished. Hidden in her command codes was humanity's ultimate weapon, something so terrible that using it would stain her soul for whatever eternity awaited. Yet as she watched her people die for the crime of existing, she knew the choice had already been made. The Velthari had sealed their fate when they decided to torture Corvin Blackthorn. Admiral Elena Nexus entered the final activation sequence for Project Icarus with steady hands, watching as humanity's ultimate weapon came online. The temporal cascade bomb would unmake matter across multiple star systems, guaranteeing the Velthari's complete extinction at the cost of rendering vast regions of space uninhabitable for millennia. "Admiral," Commander Tanaka said quietly, "Cascade weapon fully charged. Detonation will eliminate all Velthari forces within a 20 light-year radius." Through the tactical display, Nexus watched the final moments of both fleets. The U's Vindication exploded as concentrated beam fire overwhelmed her shields. but not before her temporal weapons claimed the Velthari heavy cruiser Crystal Death. The destroyer Last Hope rammed an enemy battlecruiser at relativistic speed, both ships vaporizing in a burst of kinetic energy. 31 human ships remained. The Velthari were down to 43 vessels, including their damaged flagship. Incoming transmission from the Velthari command ship, reported Lieutenant Webb. It's General Blackthorn. The main screen flickered, revealing the torture chamber aboard the crystalline Dominion. Blackthorn hung in his restraints, barely recognizable after days of systematic agony. Yet somehow that infuriating smile remained fixed in place. Behind him, Prism Commander Valandra stood among sparking consoles and emergency lighting. "Elena," Blackthorn said, his voice hoarse but steady, "I see you've been having fun without me." Nexus felt her composure crack for the first time in the battle. "Corvin, status, oh, wonderful. The accommodations are exceptional, though the entertainment gets repetitive." He coughed, blood spattering the chamber floor. "But I've been thinking about our anniversary, their anniversary, 43 years ago, when they'd been young officers serving on the same patrol ship. Elena had promised that nothing in the universe would ever separate them permanently. They'd renewed that vow through decades of war, separation, and impossible odds. "I remember," she said simply. "Good, because I need you to keep that promise one more time." Valandra stepped forward, her crystalline features fractured from the ship's damage. "Admiral Nexus, your fleet has fought with unprecedented ferocity, but both our species face extinction. I propose immediate cessation of hostilities." Nexus studied the alien commander with cold calculation. "Terms, mutual withdrawal. Your surviving ships retreat to your remaining colonies, and we will cease all offensive operations against human space. Your species may continue to exist, and in exchange, we retain control of conquered territories. The 67 extinct species remain extinct. The galaxy continues under Velthari oversight." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of damaged life support systems. It was a reasonable offer from a tactical standpoint. Both fleets were on the verge of mutual annihilation, and further combat served no strategic purpose. But Admiral Elena Nexus wasn't thinking tactically anymore. "Counter-proposal," she said. "Complete Velthari withdrawal from all occupied systems. Reparations for the 67 extinct species. Full disclosure of your technology to prevent future genocides." Valandra's features shifted through spectrums of incredulous anger. "Impossible. Your negotiating position lacks any credible threat. Actually, it doesn't." Nexus held up the activation device for Project Icarus. "Temporal Cascade Bomb. One button press and everything within 20 light-years gets unmade at the quantum level, including both our fleets. You would commit suicide to deny us victory. I would commit omnicide to ensure justice in the torture chamber." Blackthorn's smile widened to something transcendent. "That's my wife, Elena, darling. Do you remember what I told you on our wedding day? That you'd follow me into hell itself. And do you remember what you said?" Nexus felt tears she'd refused to shed throughout the battle finally track down her cheeks. "That I'd burn down heaven before I let anyone hurt you. Then keep your promise." Valandra activated her neural disruptors one final time, sending waves of agony through the general's nervous system. But instead of breaking, Blackthorn began to laugh with the sound of absolute victory. "You still don't understand," he gasped. "Elena isn't negotiating for humanity's survival. She's negotiating for your extinction." "Explain." 3,000 years of conquest, 67 extinct species, billions of dead children who never got to grow up and see the stars. His voice carried the weight of universal judgment. "Today, the universe balances its books, Admiral." Nexus pressed the activation button. The temporal cascade began as a ripple in spacetime. Exotic energy spreading outward at velocities that made light seem sluggish. Reality warped around the expanding sphere of annihilation as matter was unmade at the quantum level. Atoms scattered across dimensions that had no names. The Velthari destroyer void shard simply ceased to exist. Her crystalline hull erased from all possible timelines. The heavy cruiser Diamond Storm folded in on itself as temporal distortions tore through her quantum structure. Her crew vaporized before they could comprehend their fate. One by one, The crystalline fleet died in exotic fire, but the human ships died too. The UES determination exploded as the Cascade reached her position. Her crew's final transmission, a simple for Earth. The cruiser Vengeance denied lasted seconds longer, before temporal energy tore through her hull, sending her into the darkness. Between stars in the torture chamber, Valandra watched her fleet's destruction with something approaching horror. Your species commits suicide for revenge. No, Blackthorn corrected, his smile finally peaceful. We commit sacrifice for justice. There's a difference. The crystalline dominion shuddered as the temporal cascade reached her position. Through the observation ports, Valandra could see reality itself coming apart at the seams. Space-time fracturing as exotic energy rewrote the fundamental laws of physics. She had enough time to understand what humans truly were, not just another species to be conquered, but something far more dangerous. They were the universe's immune system, designed to eliminate threats that grew too large. The flagship folded in on itself, taking Prism Commander Valandra and the last of her kind into oblivion. Admiral Elena Nexus felt the UES retribution die around her as the temporal cascade consumed her fleet. Through the viewport, she watched stars themselves flicker as exotic energy spread across the local group, rendering entire systems uninhabitable, but ensuring no Velthari would ever threaten another species. Her last thought was of Corvin's smile, peaceful, vindicated, absolutely human. The cascade ended 43 hours later, leaving behind a region of space where the laws of physics remained fundamentally altered. Automated probes from neutral species would eventually investigate, finding only exotic radiation and the twisted wreckage of two extinct civilizations. But in the outer rim, beyond the reach of temporal weapons, 17 human colonies survived. Children who would grow up to see the stars without fear of crystalline ships. Refugees who would rebuild their civilization with the knowledge that sometimes justice required the ultimate sacrifice. The galaxy remembered the Velthari as a cautionary tale, the price of unchecked aggression. But they remembered humanity differently. They remembered the species that smiled in the face of extinction and chose justice over survival. They remembered Admiral Elena Nexus, who burned down heaven to keep her promise. And they remembered General Corvin Blackthorn, who smiled until their tormentors went extinct. In the end, that smile was humanity's greatest weapon, not because it showed strength, but because it showed a species willing to embrace mutual annihilation rather than accept injustice. The Velthari had tried to torture a human general. He smiled until their species went extinct, and the universe was free.